That's one of the biggest things I feel like with people. They're like, oh, I don't know what to do. Like, what am I going to do? Little old me, I don't have anything to offer. And it's like, I promise you, you do, first of
Yeah.
all. But even if you feel like I don't know what to do, yeah, like you can learn and kind of just look at what you have and see, okay, what are my abilities? What are my resources? What are my skills? And how can I use them to help the people around me? And that's the perfect place to start. It's just right there within your own capacity.
If you're listening to this, you are a revolutionary. We've been told that competition and greed are human nature, that there is no alternative to a society based on money and profit, that the machine is too powerful, so we should just do as we're told. We have been lied to. This way of life is a blip in the massive expanse of human history, a fragile and sadistic attempt to crush the real truth of our nature out of us. The truth that humans are creators. We are communal. We are caring. That we are part of the natural world, not its owners. And that we are powerful enough, imaginative enough, and inventive enough to form societies that fulfill and provide for everyone. It's time to question and rediscover all that we thought we knew, to understand and practice together what is needed to free ourselves from oppressive control and planetary destruction. It's time to stop looking for saviors in the world of politics, power, and profit. Together, we have all the skills and support we need to leave that world behind. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. We can choose what our future will look like together. So let's get started. All right. Hello, everyone. Another episode of Moneyless Society. I know you've missed us for a bit. We're back with more of the Circle podcast, talking to members of the organization, volunteers, learning about the work that's being done at Moneyless Society, because as you know, it is more than a podcast. We are, still building our organization, still building our plans, and obviously, at time of recording, this is right after the election in the U.S., so there's a lot of conversation about that, and this episode is not going to be focused on that, but more on like what we are doing in the wake of that. And so today we're talking to members of our Direct Action Circle. I'll let them explain what that is, but I'm Ev Malcolm. I'm part of the Media and Messaging Circle, and joining me is our co-founder co-host, Amanda Smith, also part of Media and Messaging. And then we also have the internal and external coordinators from our Direct Action Circle. So internal coordinator is Charlotte, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, my name is Charlotte, and as Ev said, I am the internal coordinator for the Direct Action Circle. Basically, that means that my job is to kind of keep up with everyone in the circle, keep up with our members, introduce new members into the circle, and I also am a part of the general circle, and I kind of communicate back and forth between the general and to Direct Action, and make sure we're all on the same page, working towards the same goals and everything. And I kind of got into doing that. And how I got into Moneyless Society in the first place is I've been an activist myself, pretty much lifelong activist. I can't remember a time when I wasn't like super concerned with how things were. Even when I was younger, I was like, yeah, something's off here. But I've kind of been more active in like community activism, specifically mutual aid, since I was in college, and realized that electoral politics don't really do anything for us. And I kind of got very disenchanted with all of that and started looking around at some local mutual aid groups in my area at that time and being like, oh, they're just directly providing people what they need. We're not writing letters to our representatives. We're not, out here with signs and just like, hey, please give us rights. We're actually just giving people what they need. And I'm like, wow, that's who would have thought, right? So I got into that through that way, through like a local mutual aid group here in Houston, back around when the COVID pandemic started. And from there, it's really just been, that's what I've been doing for trying to focus on almost entirely since then. And that led me to Moneyless Society, and the Direct Action Circle was kind of just getting started when I joined. And I was like, yeah, I want to be a part of that. So here we are.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always so cool how the timing lines up like that. We find people that are like, I'm trying to do this. We're like, we're trying to do this. And then, let's do it together. But yeah, Charlotte
Exactly.
has been awesome leaning in. Right. Go ahead, Amanda.
Oh well, I just love that you touched on the fact that you said you've always noticed something is off, and I think that's such a common theme for the people that land here in the Moneyless Society ecosystem and find a place in the lane of action. Is it seems to be like a lifelong culminating of noticing what all is off around each of us in our respective lives, and then coming together and just kind of like having discourse about that and exploring solutions to meet those needs and those shortcomings that we've experienced throughout our life.
Yeah, it's a sixth sense that everybody seems to possess around here, right?
Indeed.
And obviously we have Janique, our external coordinator. I don't know if you want to kind of talk a little bit about like that role and how you found MoSo and what you've been doing with us.
Yes, I'm Janique, and my role as external coordinator is in the direct action circle. We come up with plans, ideas, things that we'd like to enact or support other members or circles in doing. And the external coordinator disseminates the information outward from the direct action circle into other circles, like the general circle, which I'm also in with Charlotte, which is sort of a general management type of circle in a way, I guess I would say, and out to other circles and other members that, whatever information we come up with that's going to be useful or needs to be disseminated, or we need a collab with somebody, I help get that going. Or, it could be another organization, even just kind of putting the feelers out. And how did I get into MoSo? Well, I think it showed up in my feed based on my general what all was happening with what I was doing in Instagram. Next thing you know, Moso's in my feed, and I'm checking out the podcast, and I'm like, oh, I like what's going on here. And then there was an episode that Lavra Tamutis was in, talking about a digital platform, Magnova, that they are creating to house mutual aid and direct action projects and really connect peer-to-peer resources, across networks. And I had been building that structure in my mind and thought, I have no tech chops. How am I going to find somebody and explain to them this platform that I would like to build, because we can't do it without a platform. And when I heard Lavra talking about it, I don't know, I think I just messaged somebody in Insta right away. I just messaged into the Moneyless account, and I was like, I've heard a bunch of episodes. I know you guys have this platform that you're working on, and like, I'm all in. So that's how I came into MoSo. Was already thinking a lot about how to network direct action projects and really interconnect lots and lots of webs of support.
Yeah. Yeah. And Janique's been around for a minute and has been such a key cheerleader, in that way. And really appreciate both of your energy. Like you both kind of came in and like were just so hands-on immediately. And it's been super cool to see everything that you've developed. And I wonder if what you were just saying about direct action is a good time to introduce like what is the focus of the direct action circles, because we've talked about general on the show. We've talked about technomancy, being like the, imagining the future of how technology can help with the transition. I'm sure a lot of people listening probably have some concept of direct action, but if you could explain like what is the goal and activities of the direct action circle, and then we can get into like what direct action is like overall. I don't know if Charlotte, if you want to take that one.
Sure. All right. Yeah. So basically, the goal of direct action is we're just trying to meet people's basic needs. So we're just basically trying to make as few barriers as possible, just barrier-free access to meeting people's basic needs that they need in life. That's like the simplest definition, I think, of direct action. And in the direct action circle, we are trying to basically, like Janique was saying, gather information to be able to like disseminate that and make it replicable for people, and in a way that when you're like, if you want to get into community organizing and you want to create mutual aid and teach your own community about how you can take care of each other instead of relying on these outward systems, these external systems that we've been trained to rely on, sometimes you want to do that, you have no idea where to start, right? And so we are trying to basically create replicable models with the members in the direct action circle. A lot of us either have like our own direct action projects we're working on in our local communities, or we are trying to start them, and we're brainstorming, just constantly brainstorming new ideas besides the ideas we're already doing. And we're trying to basically gather all of that and put it into a way that we can share that with the world. And a big focus of direct action is community building. I mean, that really is the main focus. So we're doing that through building community here in MoSo with each other. We're doing that and building in our local communities. And we are trying to do that with anyone who's interested, really trying to show people how you can build community in a way that is separate from all of these systems that we have been taught to rely on.
Lovely summation, and very to the point. And on the point of building community right here within the Moneyless Society ecosystem, excuse me, I want to ask Janique to expound on a wonderful way that she worded it in our direct action meeting, actually, earlier in the week. How are we building community right here and now in this virtual landscape, and how is that translating into on-the-ground impacts?
I see us as building a model of community care, community trust. We've actually created a MoSo community where we are friends. We go to each other peer to peer for direct support on things that might be going on in our day-to-day lives, support for projects that we're working on, like you doing ACM in Berea, Kentucky, Amanda. We support that within MoSo, whether it's with grant writing, helping with ideas, labor of different remote sorts that might be useful to you in your on-the-ground work. We give each other emotional support like every day, basically. We create social spaces that provide support for different kinds of needs that people have. Sometimes we're watching movies, we're disseminating tons and tons of educational awareness. We are helping to promote the kinds of things that are going out in media and messaging. We're doing grant writing. So we are learning how to trust each other, how to work together, how to build a horizontal governance structure that we can rely on to serve the needs of the organization as the organization grows. We're facing outward and talking to other people about MoSo, bringing people into the community, onboarding them in a way that teaches them about the organization and also gives them a chance to develop their skills and contribute in a way that feels comfortable for them as they get to know the organization. So I think that we are a demonstration of a bunch of strangers building a community that is so rich in trust and support and talent and contribution and mutual aid. We do shares and needs where people put out contributions they'd like to offer. Other people put up needs that they have. Sometimes it happens in a chat. It happens on a spreadsheet. So this is all stuff that's replicable on the ground. Any one of us can talk to other people about this model, help them customize it, do a version of it in our own friend group or our family or our general community to kind of upscale whatever we're working on. So I think in some ways, the real expertise that we have developed is just the expertise of becoming a community. And now we really can kind of own some of that in a particular way and be a resource just for that, let alone the other resources that we're sharing. and the other kinds of education that we're sharing. So I think that's part of what MoSo really has in its tool belt now that can be very, very powerful in this time where people just need to know, how do I trust somebody that I've never met who lives down the street from me? How do I not be afraid of the people in my apartment building? How do I know who I can trust? Some of it's psychological healing. And we live in a world that promotes all of this fear, and we're learning how to get past that in real time in this community, and we're helping to radiate it outward.
No evangelicalism, right? But the word steward comes to mind in all that you're talking about. It reminds me of kind of like a training, like a pseudo training. Like we're learning how to go out and be stewards in our community. But I got to say this, and I'll shut up and move on to Charlotte. That systemic support chat be lit, right? Like that is at the core of all the reaching arms of the Moneyless Society ecosystem. I believe that without it, we would not be as robust, resilient, or making the progress that we are. Because without that, that space, that community, I think we would still be grasping at straws of healing and grounding and navigating more roughly what it is to learn how to be vulnerable with other people.
It's very true.
Yeah, and I just wanted to touch on something that Janique said about like the psychological healing aspect that we're talking about with all of this. That is a huge, I think it's really even underrated a lot of time in a lot of these discussions, how huge that component is. Because that is, we were just talking about before we hopped onto this podcast about the grief process you go through when you're realizing everything we've ever been taught is not only a lie. I mean, it's a lie, but also it's actually detrimental to your health, your mental and physical health, and all of those of everyone around you that you love. And realizing that is no small feat, and like coming to terms with that and then pushing forward anyways is extremely difficult to do. And I would say, like, if you don't have a community to do it, it can feel impossible, right? And so that's one major thing that we're doing here that Janique is talking about is building community to go through that process together. That's what a lot of the things we do with the systemic support group, the dream sessions. Janique, you should definitely talk about your dream sessions during this podcast. A lot of the things we do here, that's what it's for, right? To help with that grieving process and be like, hey, this is super hard, but we're not in it alone. We're here together. And the only way we're going to get through it is by being together. I think that's this whole toxic culture we live in purposely severs us from our own intuition and connection to our body and our gut feelings. Because if people were really honest with themselves, they know that this is not how we should be living and that this is unhealthy. And if we can get people back in contact with that inner intuition they have, like, they're going to realize that, and they're going to start looking for alternatives and for communities like this one that we're building to be a part of, so they can go through that process too. So that is something we talk about in the direct action circle a lot, along with everything else that we do. We also are talking about that trauma healing component. So we do talk a lot about like mental health in times of crisis. That's one of the like kind of research projects we're on right now. And we talk about ways to do that, which can be, through a lot of the things that we do with support groups, body doubling, dream sessions, journaling, breath work. There's so many ways of doing it. But that's, to me, there is no conversation about community building or anything to do with, revolution, radical. I can't have any conversation like that without also talking about trauma healing at the same time. So that's, I think, just another really important thing to note when talking about direct action.
I think we need to do a whole episode on systemic support, don't we, Ev? Just one
Probably.
on that. And also, I think this is a great opportunity to reiterate, to remind our listeners, and especially say to new listeners, and all that you said there, Charlotte, about basically, you talked about how we are gaslit by the system to think that we're all some version of a personal failure. And so that severs us from our intuition, because if we're actually listening to it, we would not internalize the shame and guilt and societal backlash that we get from not living up to impossible standards set for us by the capitalist hellscape that we live in. Instead, we would listen to that intuition, and we would be more connected to self and to each other. So for anybody out there, please heed that. If nothing else, like, you are not the problem.
Yeah, that's such a core message of, I mean, just the deprogram and the unlearning that we're trying to help people through and trying to support each other through, and like that is one of the coolest things about MoSo. I think is that's in every space. Is that like you are kind of interacting with people who understand that we've been lied to, and trying to kind of heal that. And one of the things we were talking about as well before the episode started was how a lot of people we're talking to right now that are feeling a lot of despair. Kind of don't know what to do, or they want to know what to do. They don't know what actions to take. They think that it's too big, whether you're talking about elections or climate change or anything like that. It's like, well, I can't possibly do anything about that. I'm not a politician. I'm not a scientist. I'm not any of those things. And we were talking about how, as the corny as it sounds, like even very small things like relearning compassion, showing compassion, being thoughtful, reaching out, being connective, things like that, are direct actions. Like that is an important, element of actually creating change. And I don't know, Charlotte, if you want to talk a bit about some of what we were, saying with like what are like the direct actions that people might overlook? Like what constitutes that average people could be doing in their community that helps?
Yeah, sure. Well, so basically, I mean, what we were saying, just a little while ago before we started this episode was, they do try to make it seem too complicated, right? When you realize how simple it is, hopefully, I hope for everyone, you can feel like a little sense of relief to be like, oh, okay, I can do that, because there's something that every single one of us can do. And what we were talking about, direct action is just removing barriers for people to access what they need to live, right? So anytime you can remove a hurdle or a barrier for someone to get something that they need, that is direct action. So a lot of that can look like food, right? Like feeding your neighbors, helping people get access to food, having a community garden, something like that, teaching someone how to grow their own food, anything like that, having like community potluck dinners. Food is a big one, obviously, but also, I mean, there's all kinds of things, even like giving someone a ride, like if you know that your neighbor doesn't have a car, for whatever reason, they don't have a car right now, and you live in maybe a place like I do in Houston where you cannot just walk to work, and like you want to offer and give them a ride, because like that's on your way where you're going, you can give them a ride to work, like whatever it is, any tiny thing where you can go, hey, like that's something I can do to help someone near me, and it's not like putting me in harm's way to do this, like, and it's only can be for the betterment of my community and the people around me. That's something you can do. And I mean, it could be an endless list of possibilities on what that could be. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I always try to say when I talk to people about it. Think about what you can do individually. Like, you don't really have to go and invent a whole new thing, if you don't want to. I mean, you can if you want to, but you don't have to. You can kind of just look at what you have and see, okay, what are my abilities? What are my resources? What are my skills? And how can I use them to help the people around me? And that's the perfect place to start. It's just right there within your own capacity. And no one is ever asking you to step outside of your own capacity either, because that's when we get into burnout, and that's a whole other topic. But activism burnout is a huge thing. And, that's another thing that I try to talk about a lot too when I talk about direct action. I have, fallen into, I'm neurodivergent, fallen into burnout too many times to even count. And I'm not helpful to anyone when I'm in that state, right? I'm not helpful to myself or anyone else. So I'm like, that's another big thing to talk about, is kind of like rotating roles with people in your community. Don't always take everything on yourself, and just be realistic with it. But that's why I'm saying, start at home, start with what just you have access to easily, and okay, how can I help people with what I have right here at my fingertips, and I think that's the best place to start.
Yeah, it's stuff that often gets overlooked. And we were talking in the chats earlier today about how people maybe think that those things won't make a difference, or they don't, they don't quite see the connection yet. It seems like it's too small to really make a difference, but it is definitely a ripple effect. And it's something that I think people find kind of not addictive, but we were talking about how, the antidote to despair is action, and direct action is the best kind of that. And once you start to do the things, once you start to do active things that make a difference, you kind of get pulled into that, because it does pull you out of the despair and make you feel better. And I want to ask Janique, like, how has kind of learning about these things and getting involved in these things, you guys have these conversations all the time. How does that kind of help you personally and the people in MoSo, you think, like, to cope?
I think that we're inspiring each other all the time. Or I can speak for myself. I'm inspired by you, Ev, you, Charlotte, you, Amanda. Every time I'm in a space with you, there's, we're all giving each other extra juice by having our own juice and sharing it. And it, again, even one small step forward is shaking something loose, probably for other people. And I mean, I've benefited more than once from being in a moment in my day where I'm just, feeling emotionally crushed by the weight of dot, dot, dot. And I'll go into the systemic support chat and say, is anybody around for a little pop up support? Like, I'm really feeling it right now. I think I've done that a couple of times, both times immediately. Some, one, two, three people popped in and said, yep, I can get on. And that is a huge gift, a huge, huge gift. So sometimes, and people have thanked me for being vulnerable in those moments too. We have thanked each other for being vulnerable in various spaces because we're taught to keep it buttoned up, right? So we're an island unto ourselves. We are siloed. We manage our own shit. Everybody keeps it nice on the surface. Everything's very civil. And we just go on suffering in silence while we feed the machine, right? So this is obviously, horrendously unsustainable for the human spirit. And we are actively doing something very different in here all the time. We're celebrating things with each other. We're sharing pain. We're listening to each other. There are no conversations that are off limits. We're working on conflict resolution building, which is huge. I mean, I think one of the things that I often feel that we've been robbed of most heavily, that feels very costly to me, is healthy human interactions. We deserve those. And we're not all psychotic messes from nature, right? We're past our limits, and we're socialized in ways that are sort of anti-human. So actively building spaces of care and inspiration and just being there for each other and saying, oh my God, like, I did this amazing thing in my community and here's what's going on with it. Hearing what's going on with ACM, hearing all the stuff that Charlotte's doing, hearing what, our beautiful MoSo contingent in Florida is up to. Like, that's all us feeding each other. We're nourishing each other when we do that. And so that helps me cope. It really does, because, the last year, let alone all the many years before that, but, the last year was a new level for many of us in a number of ways. And having the MoSo community was not just a coping mechanism. For me, it may have been the coping mechanism. Like, it may literally be the thing that kind of kept me grounded and gave me healthy spaces to be in where I could be authentic and we could all be very, very real and honest with each other. And for me, the more real and the more honest we are, the more space that opens up for natural joy. And and joking around and the absurdity of everything we're dealing with. So it's not like we're out here like, grinding it in the streets in some tedious, judgmental way. You know what I mean? We're like, we can be light with each other because we can be serious. So for me, it's a whole package deal that I get so much from these spaces.
If I could comment on all you said there, Janique, I think you so beautifully described what is essentially a system of reciprocity that is being built through sharing these spaces and sharing of ourselves. We're not making sacrifices. We're simply sharing. We're giving what we have to give to begin with. We're showing up and just intrinsically acting on what it is we were what it is we innately possess for this journey, if you will, of improving on ourselves and the world together. And then also on what you were saying, Charlotte, I think it's really important to point out again to people who are listening and thinking, what's it gonna help if I go feed the homeless guy that sits on the corner every day? Ripples make tides. That's cliche to this point, perhaps for some people. Act local, think global. That's become almost a cliche, but it really is the material reality. If you work hyper local, and here's the key: if you do it through the lens of contributism, and you are consistent enough, you will gain ground. You will make an impact. You will see the results, and you will benefit from that, obviously, because the more fortified our communities are, then the less weak links we have to try and compensate for. So, again, in everyone's best interest, including your own, to take these small steps and do these seemingly small acts that improve on someone else's world, even if you don't save the whole world in what you are doing. It reminds me of a conversation I was having earlier today with one of our very own, Nate. He was telling me about at one point playing a game, one of the Zelda games, and the objective of that particular iteration of the game was to save the world in 3 days. And that's what that's the right, yeah. And I was like, okay, so I think that's everything that's wrong with activism right now. We tend to go in thinking that we've got to do it with this dire urgency, or we're not doing it good enough, and we've got to go in like wanting to be a hero, or presenting as one, or being willing to take bullets, or so on and so forth, and just basically like with this hastiness. And that obviously, as you said, Charlotte, leads to burnout and uselessness in the end. So kind of two different points there, but that you could abstractly loop them into, if we're going to build a system that is sustainable, it needs to be rooted in care, which is inherent to reciprocity. And reciprocity is inherent to sustainability. And this is a long haul thing. Direct action is going to be something that we build on and improve on indefinitely. Yeah, Charlotte, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. Actually, what you said is like perfect setup to what I wanted to say, so it's good. I was basically kind of going off of that, like similar thing you're just talking about. I mean, this culture, this whole society is basically telling us to be aggressive, hustle, hustle. There's no time. There's no time to wait. There's no time to rest. You have to go, go, go. Like someone's going to come and take what you have, scarcity, competition. That's everything that this whole society is fueled on, right? And it really, really purposely severs us, like we're talking about, from like love, reciprocity, compassion, our own basic humanity, right? Our connection with nature and just the world around us. Like we're just taught to just completely ignore that as well. And like all of that side of things that is kind of muddled and purposely hidden from us is actually what we need to lean into to really see the changes that we want to see. And I think that's exactly what we're talking about here, is building this community that is in it for the long run. Like we're not trying to save the world in 3 days. Like we know are recognizing that there is no one answer and that it is going to be for the long haul. And that's often what I say to people as well, because every time you talk about these things, people are like, yeah, okay, what's the answer? Yeah, everything's fucked. What do we do? What's the answer? And I was like, well, I can't give you one answer. There is no one answer because there's no one right way to live either, you know? I mean, even if we transition to a post-capitalist world tomorrow, there would be many different ways that people would want to live. And each of those ways could be completely valid, right? We're not supposed to force people to live one way. That's where we run into all the problems we see today. So in that, it's like, yeah, I can't give you one simple answer of how we're going to save the world. There isn't one. But I know that if we are doing what we're doing here and building community where we really love and support and trust each other and go through all of this grieving process together, that's really step one to how we're going to hopefully get to a better place.
Yeah, I think I love that so much. Yeah, there really is no one right way. One of my favorite books of all time is Ishmael by Daniel Quinn, and like a big part of it is about like, you know, right, like how the big question is like, what's the right way to live, and there is no right way, and like, but there is, you know, a big part of like Quinn's books and the ideology here is like that there are ways that have worked in the past for people, and usually they're communities taking care of each other, you know, historically, thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. And that's a big part of what we are trying to bring back and to normalize and, you know, bring back to our culture is like communal care, and direct action is part of it, but mutual aid, like you were saying, is you know, kind of the bedrock of that. And obviously with Moneyless Society, we are all about getting out of money and profit as the basis of our society. And to replace that, you know, you have people taking care of each other. That's viable. That's proven viable, you know. And the ways that we're doing it now are sort of like that we're talking about right now are sort of like the like Band-Aid version, you know. It could be so much more robust than like a few people trying to feed people. It could be the basis is just everyone has food. But I wanted to, you know, I think that like that's a big concern for a lot of people right now. Obviously, post-election and stuff is like, fuck, what are we going to do? You know, things are going to start falling apart. But we have seen firsthand like how people taking care of each other works and how it crosses all kinds of boundaries that you would expect: political, religious, geographical. And I kind of wanted to hear from Amanda a bit. You know, you've said before, like the people that come to ACM, and for anyone who's, you know, new to the show, you can introduce it a little bit, but like people come to ACM and they're not who you would expect to get along. You know, you wouldn't expect these people to sit at a table together, but the things that you're helping them with, the things that they're helping each other with really transcend that, and they really connect over that. So could you kind of, you know, talk about that a bit?
Sure. So for newcomers, ACM is an acronym for Appalachian Community Meal and Mutual Aid Project. It was something that was spawned going on 2 years now. This November will be our third Friendsgiving event. And essentially what we do is we go big and bold into the community with lots of PR and lots of outreach, and we connect local organizations, businesses, community builders et al. To resource table at our community events, which are free and accessible for anyone who lives in the community or anyone who is there at the right time in the right place, for that matter, and free and accessible for those organizations and those businesses and whoever wants to be involved. As Charlotte touched on, at the core of what we're doing with direct action is making things as barrier-free as possible. And so through these community events, we serve a free meal. That is at the core of the events. And what ends up happening is people who are otherwise strangers but live in the same town, maybe they're even next door neighbors, but don't know each other, end up sitting across the table from each other by happenstance and getting familiar with each other's faces, each other's stories, and building relationships based on sharing a meal, which is common ground. That table becomes the common ground that they're sharing. They have their hands on it, they experience it, and so it solidifies it in their mind. Hey, I like chicken too. Let's talk about it. Let's share some recipes. Let's talk about that one time my grandma taught me how to butcher chickens or something. Or let's talk about how I wish I could afford chicken, but I can't because I'm dealing with food scarcity or whatever, you know. The stories abound. at our tables, and so does the diversity in patrons at our events, such as Ed was touching on. Because the nature of the ACM events is so inclusive, you get people from all classes, you get people from all races, you get people who are living under the bridge to people who are living in affluent neighborhoods, and they don't know it aside from what they might perceive of each other at a glance. And they share this meal across the table, and like I said, they open up relationships and start familiarity within the communities. And so they go out maybe the next day and they see the person they shared a meal with experiencing an injustice, but they can't turn their cheek, or they can't turn their face as easy because they recognize that face. They had a conversation with that face. They shared a meal with that face. So ideally, we're building a community of care through A, making resources more accessible, and B, having people solidify what it is to experience access to resources without having to prove that they're worthy, without having to sign papers, jump through barriers or hoops to prove that they have a need, or so on and so forth. Just be alive and show up and give what you can if you have anything, and take what you need. And that's really at the root of it all. And so, like I said, going on the third Friendsgiving event here in Berea this November, we are poised to recognize all the partners that have helped us get this far. We hope to feed a little over 100 people. And that's kind of par for the course for us throughout the holidays. And at this event, we'll have Narcan and Narcan demonstrations. We'll have Plan B available. We'll have winter clothing. We'll have whatever else we end up gathering between now and then. And of course, we'll have that warm meal. And people will leave there with new friends or new acquaintances or new resources to tap into. And every single time we have one of these events, and we've had one nearly every month for 2 years now, new needs are met, or needs are met over and over and over, to the point that people are able to help meet other people's needs, if that makes any sense.
So much sense. I think
of course it makes sense.
What you were saying about like how we were talking about the shares and needs earlier is like, there are probably, and I imagine in those spaces there are probably things that people don't even realize that they need or that they could get when they arrive. Like they arrive and like, I just need some food. It's like, you have Narcan, you have do you see a lot of that?
Oh, we see a lot of that. We see what I really love is when an organization partners with ACM and tables at one of our events, and their report is, I engaged with so many people tonight that I would never have seen walk through my door. Like, I am meeting more people and more diverse groups of people at your events, because these are not people that want to come through my doors because their door is an institution. But like the individual who works for that institution, they may have very benevolent intentions. They really want to help their community, but they're bound by whatever institutional parameters or restrictions. And so they come to our events with, say, like the Narcan and demonstration, and they're able to meet so many more people and pass out so much more Narcan than people wanted to actually come pick up from where they, do their 9-to-5 business.
Yeah, I was just gonna say a funny anecdote on that. So we host a lot of free stores here with the groups I work with in the Houston, Galveston area in Texas, and kind of similar to what both of y'all are saying. We'll have a lot of different supplies and things that people donate, and we have had people come and be like, "Wait, all of this is free?" It's like it's a trick or something. Right. So we had to start making signs and putting it around yes, this is free, yes, this too, everything is free. While people donate stuff, one time someone donated a toaster, and then someone walked in and they're like, this is so weird, I actually really need a toaster, and I can just take this toaster, and they're like, yeah, it's yours, congratulations. And they're like, whoa, just
That's
stuff
so
like
great.
That. Yeah.
Love that
it's
so
fun.
much.
They brought it for you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Janique?
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on that a little bit with another anecdote and a shout out, actually, to an organization called Edible Landscape in Durand, which is about a half an hour away from Flint in Michigan. And Mike Nazarian started that. They pulled the community together. He did, and other people who gathered with him pulled the community together and started planting seeds on the public land in town. They pulled the weeds, they cleaned everything up. He grew seedlings in his basement. They planted, started harvesting. And there were, first of all, people that weren't so pleased with it initially, who were like, well, people are going to be stealing it. And he was like, well, it's free. So you can't steal it if it's free. It's for them.
Mm-hmm.
So, they had to get past that, which is sort of a capitalist construct of things, right? The earth grows these beautiful things in abundance for us. And somehow or other, we've been disconnected enough from our indigenous roots to think that it's not for us and, or that it's not for other people or whatever. But the other thing that they had to do was they actually had to encourage people to come and get it, because all of that gatekeeping produces reticence in people to avail themselves of abundance when it's right in front of them. So they would have picking parties and stuff where they would go down there and pick things just to try to get the ball rolling so that people would enjoy the resource that had been created for them on their land in their town. It's been a wildly successful program. So anybody who is interested in starting something like that can look on his website, greeningyourlife.org, or look up Edible Landscape. He does a podcast, other stuff. But that is an example of the kind of direct action that, Amanda is doing with ACM, Charlotte's doing in Houston area. Like it can take so many different forms. But there are those odd psychological barriers that become part of what we're overcoming with these things.
Yeah, we see it a lot even at the food bank where I work, where, that's the whole point of a food bank, is we've collected food for you because you need food. And people come in and, you tell them they can take X amount of things. And they're always like, no, I want to leave some for other people. I don't need all of this. And it's like, we have a lot. there's a lot here. You can take all that you need, but it is like such a, we talk about a lot of work, like how on some level it is, feeling weirdly programmed to, to not like take things, that like I should be paying for this. And, the other part of it is like an internalized guilt that like, you don't want to be in need. You don't want to seem like a person who is in need, but that is part of the whole mutual aid reprogramming overall, is like learning. It's not the phrase I hear a lot at work is, it's not a handout, it's a hand up. And I think that's getting to the point. I don't know if that's the whole thing, because it's just taking care of each other is all it is. But I think that trying to break down that barrier, it is really tough, even for people that find themselves in that world or work in that world, to get over those mental barriers like you're talking about, Janique, I think.
So just a quick semantics, essentially, tangent. I experienced the same thing with ACM and the ACM food pantry. So that's another arm of action, another lane of action of ACM, as we've installed, with help from volunteers, free food pantries that are street side. They're like the book libraries, but for non-perishable food. We've installed those throughout town. And we're still working on getting people to adopt them wholly, like the community to really take onus and utilize them as intended, because of that very thing. I think that people assume if they're caught in front of a pantry, they'll be perceived as needy. They'll be perceived as needing charity, and so on and so forth. And you're right, that is such a huge barrier, if not the biggest one. Obviously, a paradigm shift is needed, or we wouldn't still be stuck in this dystopian timeline overall. But when it comes to like the terms free and gift and needy and charity and all that jazz, one of the things I like to remind myself and others of is the fact that we define free on the premise that there are prices. Like in this world that we live, there are prices, and so free is defined by that reality. In an egalitarian society where we're resource managing and there isn't a price on goods or services, then things wouldn't actually be free. They'd just be accessible. And that's what we're trying to help people understand, is that we're trying to make resources accessible to them. There's no free to it. We just want to create an abundant ecosystem and, if you will, economy, so people can simply access what they need and want. And then to wrap that up, it occurs to me also that there's actually a degree of separation in how we understand and execute our actions around free and gifts, and why I think the gift economy is going to play such a huge role going forward in what we term the proverbial transition, because people will accept gifts before they'll accept something free, because gifts come with an attachment of sorts, and that is subjective to whoever is involved in that exchange, if you will, or receiving that gift. But it's almost like the gift is attached to some kind of price. And I would like to think that we can all understand that a gift is at the root of reciprocity. So if you're struggling with the whole concept of, well, I don't want anything for free, I'm going to work for it, or whatever, right? But how about gifts? How about seeing things as gifts? Because we're all worthy of having our needs met, and we're all here to share, if only we would, pick up that torch and go forward with it.
The direct action torch. Pick it up. The mutual aid torch.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Amanda, I absolutely love that you just said all of that, because that's like thoughts that have been going through my head recently, and you just said it like perfectly. So thank you for that.
Yay! I didn't fail the whole podcast. Thank you. I felt rambly today, but go on.
No, because I think that's so important. I mean, like, you're like semantics, but I'm like, no, semantics actually are really important. Like, it actually is a lot of what's bogging us down is what we're talking about. Like if I'm like, hey, here's this free cup for you, and someone's like, no, I can't take that. What do you want in return if I take this cup? Like, everything's so transactional that people can't get out of that. And it's really, you're like, what? It's frustrating when you're looking at it from that way of like, hey, I'm trying to give you something, but it really is how we've been taught in our entire lives since we were, before we could even like talk and understand what was going on. That's what we're taught. So it's not really just semantics. It actually really is important to call those things out and like what those words mean and what we put behind them. But kind of along that same lines, I wanted to talk about like the shares and needs that we've been doing with direct action. That's been a big project of ours for like the past several months. Is we started a shares and needs board within the MoSo community, and in that people can share something. Like there's examples of that. Like we have one member who was like a physical therapist for a long time, so she's offering like sessions to community members. We have people offering to do like vegan cooking classes or helping you with like writing. I even had someone help me with like finding like building a resume, right? Or finding like cheaper car insurance. I actually had someone in MoSo help me with that too. So, I mean, like these kind of things, it's like a lot of times we all have skills, especially when we're coming together. All of us have like, we're spread out all over the place. We have different backgrounds, different educations, different things we're interested in. And we can come together and really share these things with each other that oftentimes, you might like hire someone to like help you with something like that, or hire a physical therapist or whatever, even like the support group that we do that we're talking about. I mean, this is like daily support. We can go into the support group chat and get daily support from people and be like, hey, like I'm having a hard time doing something. Can someone like hop on a call with me? And like someone is usually there to do that. That's something that like people go and pay a lot of money to like, go to therapy and even pay to go to group therapy and all of these things. And we're providing it to each other, for free, but also just like, we're not thinking of it as any sort of transaction like you're talking about, Amanda. Like we're just doing it because we actually care about each other. And we're like, hey, I have these skills and, I guess like, why not? Yeah, I should share them. So that's what the shares and needs boards is about. People could also post on there, like if they need like help with anything, like I posted, I need help finding cheaper car insurance, you post something like that. We also have like a section for like monetary needs and if we can able to fulfill those in any way. We had like a fundraising template going on for a while. And we were trying to figure out how to make that replicable as well for members that have like monetary needs. And we also have like circle needs on there for like, hey, we need someone to come and help us over in direct action. Who's interested? And we have that. So that board it really has a lot of things on it. And it's really cool to see what people have come forward to be like, yeah, I can share this, we would have a member doing like tarot card readings, which is really cool, So that's been a great, a big project for the circle that I think it's going to continue to evolve, but we're really excited to see where it goes.
I love how you essentially finished my thought, because what I didn't say completely was, in our community, because we have committed to be in this space together, again, that reciprocity kicks in. People are sharing gifts, again, with the gift economy. It's not that we're giving things out for free, essentially. We know when we give of ourselves, or we give of our skills, or we actually give something material, that through reciprocity, that's going to come back to us, and it does, day after day. Like, there's no lag. Am I right? It's abundant, as Janique was touching on so beautifully earlier.
Yeah, and it really expands on the idea of like what sharing and needing means. I think that I think a lot of times people's minds might go to like the toaster that you said, Charlotte. Like, oh, my toaster dies, I don't have a toaster I can have. But even just the idea of like things that you might not think about, things teaching, learning, like support, that kind of thing. I think these kinds of things like really expand our idea of like what it means to have community and to support each other. It is not, we talk often about how we're a very digital organization, and sometimes it feels like the only thing you can do is send people money, but there is so much more that's possible. And I think that we've seen like a lot of that internally. And I know, to the point of like what you're saying about knowledge, we touched a little bit earlier on the kind of presentations, the information you guys are sharing in Direct Action Circle. And I think this is kind of just starting up, right? Is the sort of like knowledge sharing sessions that are going to be happening in Discord, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about like what the idea is with those and how they're going to work?
I could talk about that. Yeah, so we're kind of calling it like community preparedness. Basically, we're trying to break down topics, and these topics are all so large that they could each be their own books, really. So we're trying to break them down into like manageable bites that our members have been like choosing a topic and then researching it, and then we're about to start doing research presentations and panel discussions on these topics within our MoSo community. And then we're also going to be posting the resources that we're finding and these discussions for people to be able to see. And some of the topics that several of our members are working on, we have like emergency preparedness, how to like live out of your car safely, mental health in times of crisis, which again, that one, I mean, there's like a million subtopics under that one. Access to like medications and important resources in times of crisis. How do we access those? Making local connections and community building, like Janique has been talking about, and like sharing resources with each other in times of crisis as well, and also living in abandoned spaces. That's kind of what's up on the roster right now, and then we're going to keep researching, keep coming up with it. But that's what we're working on right now. We are about to start having those events in Discord where members are going to be presenting those, and we're going to be sharing panel discussions as well, where people can talk about their own experiences with these things and add their own knowledge. And we are also going to be I forgot what I was going to say right there, but yeah, basically that's the gist of the community preparedness presentations, is trying to gather information that's going to be useful to people, especially as times continue to get harder, and how, again, kind of with the basis of it being community building. And part of that is sharing these resources. Like, we have members who know how to like live out of their car and live on the go nomadically, so they have a lot to share, right? And we have people who have gone through all kinds of different things, and like they have things that they can share. And so we're trying to put all that information to one place, basically, and hopefully this will all be housed on Magnova at some point, that Janique talked a little about earlier, so people can go there and find out, like if they're like, okay, I need to figure out how to like put AC in this old shed I found or something, so I can live in it safely with my family. Okay, let me go. Like, you can get on Magnova and find this information. So that's kind of what we're working on right now with those. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, what you had said earlier, like the replicability of these things, I think it's hard for people to imagine the impact of that. Like, just we have been so disenfranchised, and so we've lost so many skills. Feeding ourselves, any kind of personal care, has been kind of removed from like public knowledge, and so learning how to do these things again. Not that we all want to learn and go and live in a shed, but like if these things happen, all the skills that you're talking about. I think if people can really imagine that, like everyone has someone in their community who is capable of doing something very useful, and they're willing to share that. That creates an entirely alternate system of reliance outside of having to hire someone, having to wait for the government to do it, having to learn it yourself. If you just know someone who knows something, And so I hope that kind of like drives home for people a little bit, is like that knowledge sharing, and these actions, these skills are really such a gateway to like reclaiming communal reliance and not being slaves to money, barriers to access, things like that. And I want to talk a little bit about after this next comment from Charlotte, I want to talk a little bit about like your guys' future vision for like the circle and for MoSo and things like that. But go ahead, Charlotte.
Yeah. So I just wanted to like kind of piggyback on something that you said, and that kind of I was talking about as well. But yeah, I mean, people like it's insane to me. Like I go out and we do a lot of work here in Texas, like Austin, Houston, Galveston. We do a lot of work going out to like houseless encampments and things, and we're like cooking dinners and serving the residents there on a weekly basis at some encampments, and like bringing out supplies to them and that kind of thing. But like talking to these people, they have so many skills that I've never done in my life, right? I mean, they live outside and they have made a community for themselves where they are providing for each other's needs, and they're not doing it like individually, like here's my little spot and that's your spot. Like no, they actively made a community, and they have like a bike shop at this one encampment, like they fix each other's bikes. They like if someone's tank gets torn or something, they immediately go about repairing that. Like they really do work together. They even are like they have like puppies. They're like raising these dogs together, and they've been trying to like figure out how to like take better care of them. And just any person or animal that's in need in their community, they're figuring out how to take care of them with like very little resources, right? And a lot of times when I've been talking to these people, like I talked to one guy in Austin, and he was like, yeah, it's really hard being homeless because people just look at you like you're a piece of shit, like you're nothing. And he's like, I mean, when it comes down to it, I know how to survive, and I know how to live outside, and I know how to do all these things they don't know how to do. So I don't know why they're looking at me like I'm a piece of shit. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. You definitely, I'm like, we could probably learn a lot from you that we are never going to learn, in our 9-to-5 office jobs for sure. For good reason too. They don't want you to know those things to be too independent. So yeah, I mean, that's another big part of all of this, I think, is you can learn something from absolutely everyone, and we should be learning something from everyone and sharing that information.
What you said right there, yes, we should be learning from each other at every opportunity. Really quick before we go on to Janique, just to reiterate, the only difference between housed and unhoused people is, you guessed it, a house. There's no difference between us and them. There is no us and them. We are them. We are one. We are all so much closer to being in their position than we are any other. Sorry to break it to you. And so I'm glad that you talked to the fact that there are so many talented, skilled, expansive people out there that are suffering those consequences because of the indoctrination, the programming that has pitted us against them just because they don't have a house. I just had to rant about that for a second. I'm sorry. Go on, Janique.
I just wanted to throw in the fact that one of the major barriers, in addition to money, and we see, this system is great at throwing up a barrier. It's one of its primary functions. Mm-hmm. So there's barriers to everything. But one of the numerous barriers that we find, in addition to the constant money issues and other kinds of gates, is bureaucracy. Mm-hmm. And that keeps so many people from so many things that they need. And then if you layer money and bureaucracy together, it's nearly insurmountable for most people. But even just the process of filling out forms to get at things is really insane if you think about it. It doesn't make any sense. It has nothing to do with getting the person with the need. It really is, it's very exclusionary. It's ableist in a variety of ways. Like it's just a hard no in terms of connecting people with resources. So oftentimes when we're thinking, as y'all have been talking about the separation of people and resources, and then other people who don't understand why those people don't have resources and think there must be something wrong with them, or they've done something wrong, or if they hadn't done something wrong, they'd have all of these different things that people are fed in order to think, like, don't look at them, don't look out for your fellow human being, it's got nothing to do with you, it's their problem. Oftentimes it's things that any one of us find challenging. Any one of us. I mean, who here would like to throw every form they've ever been asked to fill off a cliff, never
into a
to
fire
be seen
at the bottom
again?
of a cliff.
Into a fire. If we just incinerate every form and start fresh, that would be great. Yeah. So the kinds of things that separate people from being able to access resources are, there are many layers of that. And so it's good for us to see all of the ways. And I know anybody who's ever tried to get healthcare understands this. Education, so many things. So I just wanted to drop that in as one of the things that we're talking about. We're talking about barriers.
Yeah.
That
was...
Can I talk to another thing that ACM is doing that piggybacks right
Please
off
do.
of what Janique?
I would love that.
Okay, I'm just so babbly this episode, but always a lot to say about mutual aid, right?
Yeah.
So Janique, in talking about the hurdles, the barriers, and namely the paperwork. So with the housing program that ACM has been experimenting with, the thing that we've been doing is helping people overcome those barriers by taking direct action. And that direct action looks like when we encounter a family that's per se living in a hotel. Maybe the parents aren't that educated. Maybe they're just really busy and tired because they work 12-hour shifts and they live in a hotel, and they're trying to afford eating out and paying for a room that they're being gouged on by nefarious hotel owners. I could write a book. But when it comes down to it, they need to fill out paperwork. They need to turn it in somewhere. They have to be somewhere at a certain time. They have to produce documents. They have to produce IDs, and they have to prove their need, and so on and so forth. So what ACM does is we step in and we basically handhold them through the process, because in a lot of cases, these families, these individuals, they've reached a point in their life where they feel absolutely defeated. They're tired of the paperwork. They're tired of jumping through hoops. They're tired of proving that they're sick of being unhoused or underhoused, but yet they have to get anywhere near the resources they need to rectify their situation. And so we come in and we're like, okay, you need to produce what documents? Okay, we'll do the legwork. We'll pay for those copies. We'll make sure they get in your hands. And then we'll help you keep up with those dates. It's like intense case management, but with an unconventional twist. Whereas if anybody out there listening has ever been in the position of needing to come up with the funds to gain access to housing or healthcare or food or whatnot, and you had to apply for things like housing assistance or food stamps, or maybe you could get a voucher to help fix your car, something like that. You had to produce copious amounts of paperwork and whatnot, and so you know what it's like to be have all these degrees of separation between you and the resource that you need to pick up and move on with your life. And then in particular with this housing program, once we get them over all those institutional hurdles, if the institution that they applied to assistance for cannot cover the cost for them to enter into housing, ACM and its partner UCHIRP from the University of Chicago pays the difference so that they can turnkey and get out of their situation into stable housing. But it's all because we eliminate those barriers of paperwork the best that we can. So I just want to inspire others to go out there and say, to hell with paperwork, or at the very least know that you could actually make a really big difference, again, speaking to Charlotte's points earlier, by just helping people fill it out, just sitting with them, body doubling them, holding their hand if you have to, and reminding them that this is a step on the way to meeting their goal. And I know you're tired of it and it sucks, but we're going to get there. Don't be defeated yet, so on and so forth, because sometimes that's just what people need to get over the hurdles and make it the rest of the way.
Yeah. And I think something a lot of people probably experience is that we talk about how much we hate paperwork, but a lot of times things you hate doing for yourself, it's easier to do for other people when you know it's helping them, and you find kind of the capacity in yourself to do hard things that they need because it's for them, this is something that's hard to do for yourself. But when especially God, getting someone a house, when you like if you've gotten someone shelter for their family, that's like there's no like how do you top that? In terms of like the reward of it. Um, but yeah, cannot talk enough about ACM. Um, but like I think a good thing to wrap on would probably be like definitely. So one thing, so our Discord is open now. The link is in our link tree. You people can join our Discord and start to learn more about the organization. Our onboarding is still a little paused while we are like kind of firming up that process for like getting onboarded. So that should reopen soon. But in the meantime, people can join the Discord. But I do want to talk about like what kinds of volunteers or what kinds of people like what kinds of skills, interests is the Direct Action Circle looking for or in need of? And then I do also want to get from you guys kind of like, I've been doing this with every member that's been on the show, like, kind of like your future vision for MoSo. So I'm not sure if one or both of you want to speak to, the volunteer aspect, like what kinds of people, what kinds of interests, what kinds of needs, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak on it first. But yeah, and basically, we want people who are, first of all, doing any sort of local mutual aid direct action projects in their own communities and want to share that or get more support for it. We want to hear from you, right? We want to get as much information as we can on that, and we want to be able to support you with what you're doing. Or if you just want to find out more about direct action as well and how to get involved in it, we also want you. And we want people who want to research and turn information into presentations and infographics, which, very much sounds like I'm asking you to do like a PowerPoint presentation in your college class or something. But we really need that because that's part of what we're doing is taking all of this, bulk of information and trying to put it into a forum where people can look at it and go, oh, okay, I have no idea where to start, but I guess I can go look at this and okay, I want to start having like a peer support group in my community. How do I do that? Oh, look, there's literally steps, like that's what we want. Like, yeah, like that's what we're trying to do. So like, if that's your thing, if you're like, man, I love a good infographic, we definitely want you. And just,
Yeah.
and in general, just anyone interested in building a community and the ways that we've been talking about here in this episode, we want you to be a part of ours. And we want you to come and, learn, love, grow, and share that back into your communities because that's how the ripple effect happens, right? So yeah, I don't know which Janique, if you have anything to add to that.
All so well said, Charlotte. So yeah, double down on that for sure. Well, let's see here. Yeah, I would say that personally, I would love to see some herbalists and foragers come in because I'm very interested in us providing, a route back toward indigenous medicine for people to have direct access to. And, any foraging and herbalist expertise would be very, very welcome in the community. But when you get down to it, all expertise is welcome. And, part of that expertise is care. If somebody who really, really cares about their community and might feel the distance of how to do something in that community can come in and learn how to be in community with us and take that back out the door again into their own community. So, if you're feeling isolated, you're not sure what to do after today or yesterday or October 7th or any of the other days that stack up that feel heavy, but you've got a lot of love in your heart and you would like to figure out how to be useful in any community that you belong to, come on in. Because we're all about people just developing their own gifts and their own voice and their own way to express that and give and receive. Just even getting comfortable with the giving and receiving mechanism as just the flow of life is something that many of us have been separated from. So you can come in, get comfortable with that in MoSo and take it back out the door into the other communities that you belong to. Anybody who's got a great line on land for intentional communities. We are extremely interested in being on land in, one place, two places, 10 places, you name it. So anybody who can help us to do those sorts of things. But really, whatever expertise somebody has, there's a place for it. Any kind of STEM knowledge, somebody who's a great writer, a great teacher, like, you could take any person anywhere, bring them in. And, if I had a 20-minute conversation, if any one of us had a 20-minute conversation with them, let alone an hour, we would start to see some really rich areas for collaboration, connection, contribution. So even people who aren't sure what they would contribute, if they're feeling some kind of a pull in their heart, it's still a great idea for them to come in and check it out, let alone if they are feeling like they've got a very specific thing that they'd like help with or would like to contribute.
Yeah, we were just seeing today on our Instagram, how many people were feeling isolated, like they were the only ones thinking the things that they're thinking. And I've definitely seen so much of what you're saying, Janine, people coming in, just looking for connection, just looking to talk to people who are anywhere in the same, ballpark of thought. And then over time finding like that they do have a really helpful skill or that they just want to learn one, they just want to get involved. And I think that that's like a really viable path for getting involved in this kind of thing. I think a lot of people are probably afraid of like a big hurdle of like getting into activism. It's like, I don't know if I'm cut out to like be an activist. And it's like, it's not as scary as you think it is. It's just like, you join a group, they need you to make a slideshow. You make a slideshow. It's a banger.
It's
so
not
helpful.
as glorious as they think it is, but it's also not as unrewarding as some people think it is.
Yes.
It is just literally existing in the vein of care and compassion and courage. That's what showing up for this movement is. I don't even like the word activist these days. It's been so Hollywoodified.
Right.
If that's not a word, but if you know what I mean.
It is now.
I said it. It's a word. Moviefied. That's what we'll say.
Moviefied. I like them both.
Yeah. I mean, I was just going to kind of comment what you were saying, Ev. Yeah, I mean, that's like, that's one of the biggest things I feel like with people. They're like, oh, I don't know what to do. Like, what am I going to do? Little old me? I don't have anything to offer. And it's like, I promise you do, first of all. But even if you feel like I don't know what to do, like you can learn, you can definitely learn. And that's a big part of what we're trying to do, is, like Janique, you've been saying we should really get into like the nitty gritty of how we got in contact with like certain organizations and like all of these things. And I'm like, because that's something that like for me, I always have been pretty good at networking, but that's not a skill that comes naturally to a lot of people. And it's like, okay, how do I find out about these things that are going on to even begin to get involved in them? And I'm like, okay, that's part of what we're doing is trying to show people how to do that. Like step one, you don't know what to do. We can show you what to do, but I promise you, no matter who you are out there, you have a skill that is useful and can help your community. No matter who you are, no matter how if you feel like I have no idea what to do, I feel lost, I feel isolated, there's something you can do. And I challenge you to just try to think about what that is. Just pick one thing and start there.
It's really important, I think, also at this point to reiterate, as I have in previous episodes, and I do at every ACM event, just showing up is doing something. Just showing up is adding to the energy, is adding to the room, is adding to our expansion collectively. Just showing up shows and validates what we're trying to achieve. It shows that people want it, and it validates what we're trying to achieve here. Ladies, I am so incredibly honored to get to work with you all, to exist with you all in the space that we've built together. I'm so very grateful for the expansion and the growth you have lent to Moneyless Society and all of its aims and objectives. And I'm just as excited in knowing that there's going to be more of those relationships and friendships established as Moneyless Society keeps going down the line and more people show up.
Is that your future vision then? Because Ev gave us that instruction. Is that part of your future vision for the org, Amanda?
I guess it is a healthy kind of growth, an expansion through a collective that we build together, and just revisit and relearn what it is to coexist in a communal way.
Yeah, let's go down the line. Let's go to Janique next. You're the resident dream guru. Please give it to us.
Yes, you are.
Okay, we'll have a little mini dream session.
Yeah.
In terms of, I mean, it's going to be a mosaic, as Charlotte said. There's no one answer. So, but I believe in the tapestry of all of us being. We're all rich indigenous material. And, when we're connected to our land and the gift that it gives us and the beautiful children that we produce and offering care in a very healthy, reciprocal, ecosystem based way, there's no limit to what we can do. We want every person to be developed to the full extent that they want to develop themselves. And this chicken or the egg business of rugged individualism or community development, just it's just another distraction from something that doesn't need to be parsed out into some weird binary. We are products of our environment and we create our environment. Personal accountability is where the personal development and the healing comes from, but it happens in community. So we can have communities where people have grace for each other and they say they're sorry when they make a mistake, and we love each other and we care for each other, and everybody's quirks and foibles and imperfections are part of the fabric of how we live with each other. And everybody can have personal space that is a sanctuary and collective space that is also a sanctuary, and we can celebrate things and we can be surrounded by incredible beauty and breathe fresh air and dunk ourselves in clean water and eat beautiful food out of rich, nourished soil that's full of bugs. And we can have the mycelium networks flowing. Like, the earth gives us everything that we need to flourish. And getting back to that is something that we can have, and we can add technology to it in a way that serves us. Like, it's when we're conscious and we're living in our hearts, then our technology will reflect that, our homes will reflect that, our land will reflect it, our relationships will reflect it. And when we face each other and look each other in the eye and say, this is what we want, and we won't settle for any less. We want to live in color with each other, holding hands and making everything that we want to make out of this world. We can do it. And we can network it across the planet in customized ways where we're sharing everything. And I mean, I want us to have it all. Just have it all.
Yeah.
And I think we can.
I love that.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well said.
Right? I'm going to live in color. That's dope. How about you, Charlotte? What do you kind of envision or hope for, what comes out of all that we're trying to build here?
Yeah, well, first of all, that's why Janique is the dream queen, everybody, because that's, like, wow.
She gets you into space, let me tell you. And then it's just silver lining from there.
Right.
I was just picturing all of that as you're describing it, Janique. I'm like, wow, this is so beautiful. Like,
in the background.
Like,
right. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear like the water of the creek rippling in the background, and we're all just like dancing in the creek, just like,
right.
I love it.
It's a firm picture.
Yes, I love that so much. I think for me, it's very much similar as to what y'all were saying, but I just see us moving forward with exactly what we've been talking about this whole episode. It's just this beautiful community we've been building, and just moving that just outwards, outside of just what we're doing here right now, but, to everyone that comes into contact with MoSo. And here's, what we're trying to do. I hope if they get nothing else out of it, they would get that out of it. Like, okay, I'm going to approach living differently, how I interact with people, how I share my time and love and energy. I'm going to do that differently, and I'm going to think about it differently. Even my relationship with myself, I'm going to think about that differently too, because capitalism, we can internalize it. It would even severs the relationship with ourselves. So I mean, even that, I'm like, that's one of the biggest things I think that this movement that we are all a part of and building here is doing, is teaching people to get back in contact with themselves and their intuition, like we were talking about earlier. And that's kind of like, sort of like a meta, like I want us to like help people get in contact with their intuition and like all of that. But like more concretely, I mean, yeah, like I want to see us continue to build our online community like worldwide, and I want to see us building these in-person intentional communities that we were talking about, and I want to see us be able to come together in person and do everything that we're doing now, just like in the same room. Would be cool,
IRL, right?
would be really, yeah, IRL would be really cool. And I want to, I want to be able to, like someone said it, I don't know who said this, but basically like show people what we're talking about instead of just tell them. That's what I want to be able to do, and I try to do that every day in how I live anyways. Like I try, instead of like, hey, we need to do this and we need to live like this and we need to, and being like preachy about it, I try to just like live it as best as I can. And I feel like that's kind of what all of MoSo is trying to do. And I feel like that's what we're going to keep doing, is pushing forward with everything we've been talking about today and just really living it out. And in a future, hopefully we will have intentional communities where we can live out all of this that we're talking about in person, and other people can see that. And people are losing faith in the system just left and right, dropping like flies, right? I talked to so many people who are really in like despair, right? And then like what they're going to be needing is alternatives. And I think that is really what we're working on providing here, is an alternative. You don't have to be in despair. You don't have to do it alone. You don't have to be isolated. You don't have to just take the brunt end of the stick and just, pretend that it doesn't hurt. Like, we are here and we are building something better. And I think if there's anything that is worth talking about and doing, it is that, like just working on spreading love in this world that can sometimes feel like a very dark place, realizing that even though it can be dark, there is still a lot of people out here, like everyone, all you beautiful people here, that are really still have hope and are spreading love and light. And yeah, that's what I see MoSo continuing to do. So.
Because of people like you, Charlotte. Hey, Ev, what do you say that we be sure to drop some links in the description to what Charlotte is doing in Houston, if there is a way to link up out there, and if not, we'll make a way. Maybe to ACM, maybe to Mac Nazarian's Edible Landscapes, definitely to Magnova's Open Collective, so people can lay their eyes on some of these things we're talking about and get a feel for just how regular people are behind the things that are making the biggest positive impact in people's lives day to day.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll definitely make all that accessible.
Yeah, and I was just gonna like say really quick on that. That's another thing. Like the groups that I work with in the Houston area, the people that are in these groups. I mean, a lot of us, we're broke. We don't have much ourselves. We're always like scraping together whatever we have, but we do it. We do it and we get it done, and we're very passionate about it. And that's like, yeah. I mean, we'll definitely, we post links to how people can get involved. But if you are like in Texas, we have a lot of groups throughout Texas that are doing things, and this whole like regional area really have groups in New Orleans. And I mean, it's just people just showing up with what they can. I mean, we go and feed people every week at encampments, and you do what you can. You don't have to pay for things. You don't have to like, if you're not a cook, you don't have to cook the food. If you want to literally just show up at the encampment and like talk to the residents for an hour, they love that. They want people to come and treat them like human beings, that the human beings that they are, that are worthy of love and being heard, and be like, hey, how is your day going? Like literally, if you can talk to people, you can do something for,
This is true.
So I'm like, yes. So I'm like, please, like find some way to get involved wherever you are in the world. There is a way that you can do it. And yeah.
Man, that's such a tagline. If you can talk to people, you can do things. That's absolutely. Yeah, I thank you guys so much for joining and sharing all of your wisdom and your passion. So much passion, so much knowledge, so much involvement. I am very, like Amanda said, very honored to work with you guys. Looking forward to more people joining in. And I think, to kind of cap on what Charlotte was saying, like, I know a lot of people are feeling despair right now, but like she was talking about, if you're trying to live your values, that's what you can do right now. That's what you can do about all the things that you're afraid of, is try to live the things that you want to see, and find the people who are helping and help them. So definitely reach out to our Discord, check out the links that are going to be in the description, and we'll see you at the next podcast. Thanks, guys.
See you, everybody.
Thank you, Ev. Thanks, Charlotte. Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you all.
Do you want to do something about all the issues we talk about here on our show? Do you want to learn more, get involved, and help us help others break out of the cycle? Step 1 is to join the growing community of rebels and kind hearts sharing their knowledge and passion. Follow Moneyless Society on our social media pages and spread the message to people who need it. When you're ready, you can get involved by reaching out and becoming a Moneyless Society volunteer. We need every skill imaginable, large or small, if we're going to resist the powers destroying our planet. And even if you don't have time to volunteer, you can help us build the dream with donations of any size. We create all of this community and content because it is our passion, but we need resources to get it done. Monthly Patreon donors receive cool perks like early access to future episodes, and visitors to our website, moneylesssociety.com, can buy MoSo shirts and other merchandise that help spread awareness. We're glad you're here, and we hope that you'll keep learning and growing with us. The goal may seem far away, but we can get there together.